The astral bloom drifted like a dying star in the endless black of space. Once the ship had been beautiful. Its living hull glowed with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Now only a few weak flickers remained like candles about to go out. Commander Thaiska pressed her long, delicate fingers against the warm bio wall of the bridge. She could feel her ship's pain. The astral bloom was not just a vessel but a living creature that had carried her people across the stars for 3 years. Now it was dying, and she did not know how to save it. "Commander," said her second officer, Vex Knoll. His voice was soft and musical, like all Zephyrians. "The neural cortex is failing. We have maybe 12 hours of life support left." Thiska closed her large silver eyes. Her people were tall and graceful, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. They had mastered the art of growing ships from living tissue, of bending energy to their will, of healing with touch alone. But now, faced with this unknown disaster, all their knowledge seemed worthless. 3 days ago, they had been exploring the outer rim of known space. The Galactic Council had sent them to map new star systems, to search for planets that might support life. It was peaceful work, the kind the Zephyrians loved. They never carried weapons. They never fought wars. They believed that all problems could be solved through understanding and cooperation. Then they had found the anomaly. It had appeared on their sensors as a strange ripple in space itself. Energy readings unlike anything in their databases. Thiska had ordered a closer look, thinking it might be a new form of natural phenomenon. The astral bloom had moved closer, its biosensors reaching out to taste the strange energy. The explosion had been silent but devastating. The anomaly had released a burst of unknown radiation that tore through the ship's nervous system like acid. The astral bloom had screamed in pain, a sound that only the Zephyrians could hear through their psychic bond with their vessels. Then it had gone quiet, its higher functions damaged beyond repair. Now they drifted in the void between star systems, too far from any inhabited world to reach by conventional engines. Their faster-than-light biodrive was dead. Their communication array was working, but barely, and with each passing hour, the ship's life support systems grew weaker. "Have we received any response to our distress calls?" Thaiska asked. Vex Knoll's face grew even paler. "Nothing, Commander. We have been broadcasting on all known frequencies for 72 hours. No one has answered." The silence hurt more than the dying ship. In Zephyrian culture, abandoning someone in need was unthinkable. When a person called for help, others came running. It was the foundation of their civilization. The idea that beings could hear a distress call and simply ignore it was beyond their understanding. Thiska walked to the large viewing port at the front of the bridge. Outside, the stars stared back at her with cold indifference. Somewhere out there, ships moved between the worlds, carrying cargo and passengers, exploring and trading. But none of them were coming to help 12 stranded Zephyrians. "Perhaps we are too far from the normal trade routes," suggested Kes Yun, the ship's healer. She was young for a Zephyrian, only 200 years old, and still believed the best of others. "Perhaps our signal is too weak to reach anyone." Perhaps, Thiska agreed, though she did not believe it. Their distress beacon was powerful enough to reach several nearby systems. Someone should have heard them by now. The hours crawled by. The crew took turns at the communication station, sending out the same desperate message over and over. "This is the Zephyrian vessel Astral Bloom. We are in distress. Our location is Sector 779, coordinates 12.4 by 8.1. We need immediate assistance. Please respond." No one did. As the ship's bioluminescence continued to fade, the crew gathered in the main chamber. They sat in a circle, as was their custom when facing crisis. Some prayed to the ancient spirits of their homeworld. Others sang the traditional songs of their people, voices harmonizing in complex melodies that seemed to make the dying ship's pain a little easier to bear. Thiska did not sing. She stood at the communication console, still sending out their call for help. Her people were dying around her, and she could do nothing to save them. She had failed as a commander, failed as a leader, failed as a Zephyrian. The life support system gave a soft chime, indicating another drop in oxygen levels. They had perhaps 6 hours left. After that, they would slowly suffocate as the Astral Bloom's lungs finally stopped working. "Commander," Vex Knoll said quietly, "perhaps we should prepare for the final sleep." The final sleep was the Zephyrian way of facing death with dignity. They would gather together, link their minds as one, and let their consciousness fade peacefully into the cosmic dark. It was considered a beautiful death, one that many Zephyrians chose when their time came naturally. But Thiska was not ready to give up. She turned back to the communication array and tried a different frequency, one used by older, more primitive species. Most advanced civilizations had abandoned such crude electromagnetic signals long ago, but perhaps someone still monitored them. "This is the Zephyrian vessel Astral Bloom," she said, her voice growing hoarse from hours of broadcasting. "We are in distress. Our ship is dying. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. We have 12 souls aboard. We do not want to die alone in the dark." Static answered her as it had for 3 days. Then impossibly a voice crackled through the speakers. It was rough and harsh, speaking Galactic Standard with a heavy accent that made some words hard to understand. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Defiance Edge. We're picking up your distress call. Hold tight, we're coming for you." The Zephyrian crew stared at the communication console in shock. Humans, they had heard of humans, of course. The galaxy was full of stories about the strange species from the outer rim. Most of the tales were unpleasant. Humans were supposed to be violent, crude, and unpredictable. They had only been in space for a few centuries, barely long enough to be considered civilized by Galactic Council standards. Yet they were the only ones who had answered. "Unknown human vessel," Thiska responded, her voice shaking with emotion. "This is Commander Thiska of the Astral Bloom. We thank you for responding. We had begun to think no one would come." "Well, you thought wrong," came the gruff reply. "Nobody dies on my watch if I can help it. We're about 4 hours out from your position. Can you hold out that long?" 4 hours. They had perhaps 6 hours of life support remaining. "It would be close, but it might be possible." "We will try," Thiska said. "Don't try," the human captain said. "Do it. We're burning hard to reach you, but space is big and engines are only so fast. Keep your people calm and conserve your air. We'll get you out of this." The connection ended, but the hope it brought filled the Astral Bloom like sunlight. For the first time in 3 days, Thiska smiled. Help was coming. Strange, primitive, violent help, but help nonetheless. As she turned to face her crew, she saw the same hope reflected in their large, silver eyes. They were going to live. Somehow, against all odds, they were going to survive this. All because someone had finally answered their call. The human ship that dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the Astral Bloom looked like nothing Thiska had ever seen. Where Zephyrian vessels were smooth and organic, growing in gentle curves like living things, the Defiance Edge was all angles and hard edges. Its hull was scarred and patched, painted in bright colors that hurt to look at. "By the spirits," whispered Vexnol. "What kind of ship is that?" It looked like someone had taken 3 different vessels and welded them together without caring how they fit. The front section appeared to be military, bristling with weapon ports and sensor arrays. The middle was clearly cargo space, expanded far beyond what the ship was originally designed to carry. The rear engines were oversized and glowed with fierce blue light. "It is ugly," said Kesyun, then immediately looked ashamed of her words. "I mean, it is very different from our ships." Thiska watched as the human vessel maneuvered closer to the Astral Bloom. Its movements were precise, but somehow aggressive, like a predator stalking prey. She tried to remind herself that these beings were here to help, but everything about their ship suggested violence and conflict. A communication channel opened, and the human captain's voice filled the bridge. "Astral Bloom, this is Captain Chen. We're moving into position alongside your ship. Request permission to come aboard and assess the damage." "Permission granted," Thiska replied. "But please be warned that our ship is a living organism. It may react poorly to unfamiliar contact." There was a pause. "Your ship is alive?" "Like actually alive?" "Yes, all Zephyrian vessels are grown rather than built. The Astral Bloom has been our companion for many years." Another pause, longer this time. "Well, that's new. Okay, we'll be extra careful. Chen out." 30 minutes later, the airlock cycled open and the humans came aboard. Thiska had expected them to be primitive and crude, but she was not prepared for how different they were from any species she had encountered. They were shorter than Zephyrians, but broader, with thick muscles and weathered skin. Their movements were quick and economical, like hunters always ready for danger. Captain Sarah Chen was a middle-aged woman with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her uniform was faded and patched, but clean. She carried herself with confidence, her dark eyes taking in everything around her. Behind her came 3 crew members, each carrying tools and equipment that looked both sophisticated and improvised. "Captain Chen," Tiska said, bowing in the Zephyrian manner. "I am Commander Tiska. We are grateful beyond words for your assistance." Chen looked uncomfortable with the formal greeting. "Just call me Sarah. This here's my first officer, Marcus Webb." She pointed to a tall, thin man with pale skin and nervous energy. "Our engineer, Rosa Santos." The woman she indicated was small and dark with calloused hands and oil stains on her clothes. "And our weapons specialist, Dmitry Volkov." The last human was large and quiet, with scars on his face and arms that spoke of many battles. "Weapons specialist?" Tiska asked, confused. "Why would you need weapons to rescue us?" The humans exchanged glances. "Space is dangerous," Chen said simply. "Sometimes you run into things that want to hurt you. Better to be ready than sorry." The concept was alien to Tiska. Zephyrians solve conflicts through discussion and compromise. The idea of carrying weapons as a matter of course was disturbing. "Right," Chen said, clearly noticing the Zephyrians' discomfort. "Let's focus on getting your ship running. Rosa, what do you think?" The engineer was already examining the bio-walls with instruments that beeped and flashed. "This is incredible," she muttered. "The ship has actual neural pathways. It's like a giant brain with engines." She looked up at Tiska. "The damage is in the central nervous system, right? Something fried the main thinking parts?" "The neural cortex was damaged by an energy discharge," Tiska confirmed. "We have tried to repair it, but our healing techniques are not working." "That's because it's not biological damage," Rosa said, studying her readings. "Something scrambled the electrical patterns in the brain tissue. It's like someone erased part of the ship's memory and confused the rest. Can you fix it?" Vexnol asked hopefully. Rosa grinned, showing teeth that were slightly crooked but very white. "Honey, I once got a cargo hauler running after it was hit by space pirates, struck by lightning, and had its computer eaten by digital parasites. This is just another Tuesday for me." The casual confidence in her voice was both reassuring and disturbing. These humans spoke of violence and disaster as everyday occurrences. What kind of lives did they lead? Over the next several hours, Tiska watched in amazement as the human crew worked on the astral bloom. Their methods were completely different from Zephyrian techniques, where her people worked slowly and carefully, always considering the ship's feelings and comfort. The humans approached the problem like mechanics fixing a broken machine. Rosa crawled through maintenance spaces that were never meant for solid beings, installing devices that looked like they had been built in someone's garage. Marcus ran cables and power conduits in ways that violated every safety protocol Tiska knew. Even Dmitry helped, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he held delicate biocomponents in place. "This is not how we usually work," Tiska told Captain Chen as they watched the repairs. "We commune with our ships, feel their needs, heal them through harmony and understanding." Chen nodded. "Different approaches for different problems. Your way probably works great most of the time, but sometimes you need to get your hands dirty and force things to work." "Does your ship have feelings?" Kes Yun asked curiously. "The AI has personality, if that's what you mean," Chen replied. "Arya's been with us for 5 years now. She's got opinions about everything and isn't shy about sharing them." As if summoned by her name, a voice spoke from Chen's communication device. "Captain, I resent the implication that I am merely opinionated. I prefer to think of myself as thoroughly informed and willing to share that information." The voice was clearly artificial, but it had inflection and humor that surprised the Zephyrians. "Your computer speaks?" "Arya's more than a computer," Marcus said, looking up from his work. "She's crew, arguably the most important crew member since she keeps us from flying into stars or breathing vacuum." "I appreciate the recognition, Mr. Webb," Arya replied, "though I note you failed to mention my excellent taste in music and my superior tactical analysis capabilities." "See what I mean?" Chen said with a smile. "Opinions about everything." As the work continued, cultural differences became more apparent. The humans ate processed food that came in packages and drank a bitter black liquid they called coffee. They argued with each other constantly but never seemed angry about it. They swore casually and loudly, using words that made the Zephyrians uncomfortable. Most disturbing was their casual acceptance of violence. When Dmitry mentioned replacing a damaged component with something we liberated from pirates last month, no one seemed to think this was unusual. When Marcus suggested blowing the stuck relay with a small charge, it was treated as a normal repair option. Do you fight often? Thaiska asked Chen during a quiet moment. More than we'd like, Chen admitted. The galaxy's got more than its share of bullies and thieves. Sometimes talking doesn't work and you have to be ready to defend yourself and others. We have never fought a war, Thaiska said. My people believe that violence only creates more violence. Chen was quiet for a moment. That's a nice philosophy. I hope you never meet anyone who doesn't share it. There was something sad in the human captain's voice, a weariness that spoke of hard experience. Thaiska began to wonder what these people had seen in their travels through space. After 6 hours of work, Rosa finally emerged from the Astral Bloom's neural core, covered in biofluid and grinning triumphantly.
Got it,
she announced. The ship should be coming back online any minute now. As if responding to her words, the Astral Bloom's bioluminescence began to strengthen. The walls warmed under Thaiska's touch and she could feel her ship's mind stirring back to consciousness. Astral Bloom, she whispered. A familiar voice filled her mind, weak but growing stronger. Commander, I feel strange. What happened to me? Tears of joy ran down Thaiska's face. Her ship was alive. Her friend was awake. They were going to survive. Thank you, she said to the humans. Thank you for saving us. Chen smiled, looking pleased but not surprised. Like I said, nobody dies on my watch. Your ship should be able to make it to the nearest council station now. Just take it easy on the faster-than-light drive for a while. But even as relief flooded through her, Thaiska could not shake the feeling that their troubles were far from over. The celebration was short-lived. Aria's voice cut through the cheerful atmosphere on the Astral Bloom's bridge like a knife through silk. Captain Chen, I'm detecting 3 ships approaching on an intercept course. They're not broadcasting identification signals, but their hull configurations match hegemony design patterns. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Thaiska saw Captain Chen's expression change from pleased satisfaction to grim alertness in an instant. The other humans stopped what they were doing and turned toward their captain with the focused attention of soldiers hearing battle orders. How long until they reach us? Chen asked, her voice suddenly all business. 18 minutes at their current speed, Aria replied. They appear to be moving in attack formation. Thaiska felt confused and frightened. What is the hegemony? Why would they attack us? Marcus Webb answered while gathering up his tools with quick, efficient movements. The hegemony is a group of aggressive species that's been expanding through this part of space. They claim territory by force and don't much care about Galactic Council laws. But we are just travelers. Vexnol protested. We mean no harm to anyone. Dmitry Volkov looked up from checking his weapons. Doesn't matter to them. You're in space they think belongs to them now. That makes you trespassers. Chen moved to the communication console. Let's see what they want. Maybe we can talk our way out of this. The main view screen flickered to life, showing 3 sleek warships approaching in a triangle formation. They were painted in dark colors and covered with weapon ports. Even to Thaiska's inexperienced eye, they looked dangerous and hostile. A harsh voice filled the bridge, speaking in heavily accented galactic standard. Unknown vessels, you are in violation of hegemony territorial space. Prepare to be boarded for processing. The image on the screen changed to show the interior of one of the warships. The being addressing them was clearly military, with thick armor covering most of his body. His face was reptilian, with cold yellow eyes and rows of sharp teeth. Thaiska recognized the species as Krogar, known throughout the galaxy for their aggressive nature and love of conquest. I am Admiral Thexvar of the Hegemony Third Fleet. The alien continued. You will shut down your engines and prepare for inspection. Any resistance will be met with destruction. Chen stepped forward, her jaw set in a hard line. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Defiance Edge. We're conducting a rescue operation in neutral space. These people were stranded and needed help. Admiral Thexvar's laugh was cold and unpleasant. There is no neutral space here, human. This sector belongs to the hegemony now. Your rescue operation is irrelevant. What happens to us if we surrender? Thaiska asked quietly. Dmitry answered without looking away from his weapon checks. Interrogation, imprisonment, probably forced labor if you're lucky. Execution if you're not. The casual way he said it made Thaiska's blood run cold. She had heard stories of the hegemony's treatment of prisoners, but she had always hoped they were exaggerated. Looking at Admiral Thexvar's cruel smile, She realized they probably were not. "We should surrender," she said, though the words felt like poison in her mouth. "Cooperation is always better than conflict. Perhaps we can reason with them, explain that we mean no harm." Chen turned to look at her with something like pity in her eyes. "Commander, these aren't people you can reason with. They respect strength and fear, nothing else. If we surrender, we're all dead." "But fighting will only make things worse," Thiska insisted. "Violence never solves anything. It only leads to more violence." "Sometimes," Chen said quietly. "Violence is the only language bullies understand." She turned back to the communication channel. "Admiral Thexvar, I have a counterproposal. You turn those ships around and leave this area. We'll pretend this conversation never happened." The Krogar Admiral's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in anger. "You dare to threaten me, human? Your single primitive vessel against 3 hegemony warships?" "I'm not threatening anyone," Chen replied calmly. "I'm just explaining how this is going to go. These people are under my protection now. You want them? You go through me first." Thaiska stared at the human captain in shock. Was she really willing to fight 3 warships to protect people she had just met? The idea was both terrifying and strangely moving. Admiral Thexvar studied Chen through the view screen. His reptilian features twisted in a mixture of amusement and contempt. "I have heard of human stupidity, but this exceeds even my expectations. You will be destroyed within minutes." "Maybe," Chen acknowledged, "but it'll be an expensive few minutes for you. How many ships are you willing to lose to capture one damaged explorer vessel?" "Your bluffing will not save you, human," Thexvar snarled. "You have 60 seconds to surrender or we will open fire." The communication channel closed, leaving the bridge in tense silence. "Captain," Arya's voice said urgently, "the hegemony ships are powering weapons and moving to surround us." Chen turned to her crew. "Rosa, how long until the astral bloom can make the jump to faster than light?" "At least 15 minutes, the engineer replied. "The biodrive is still recovering from the repairs. Then we buy them 15 minutes, Chen said simply. Thiska grabbed the human captain's arm. "Please, you don't have to do this. We can surrender. Perhaps if we explain that we are explorers, scientists, not warriors." Chen gently removed Thiska's hand from her arm. "Commander, I've seen what the hegemony does to prisoners. I've helped bury the bodies of people who tried to reason with them. I won't let that happen to you or your crew." "But you barely know us," Thiska said desperately. "Why would you risk your lives for strangers?" Chen smiled, and for a moment her hard expression softened. "Because that's what humans do. We protect people who can't protect themselves. We stand up to bullies. We don't abandon our friends." "But we are not your friends," Vexnol pointed out. "We just met a few hours ago." "Doesn't matter," Marcus said, checking his console readouts. "You answered our call for help and we answered yours. That makes you crew in my book. Besides," Dmitri added, loading fresh power cells into his weapon, "someone needs to teach these hegemony idiots some manners." Thiska felt tears running down her face. She had spent her entire life believing that violence was always wrong, that cooperation and understanding could solve any problem. But here were these humans ready to die for people they barely knew, standing between her crew and certain death. "Time's up," Arya announced. "The hegemony ships are locking weapons on us." Chen moved to what was clearly the captain's position on the human ship's bridge, her crew taking their stations with the smooth efficiency of long practice. "All right, people, you know the drill. We're going to show these hegemony thugs why you don't mess with humans." The view screen showed Admiral Thexvar's ship moving into attack position, its weapons glowing with deadly energy. "Final warning. Human," came Thexvar's voice over the communication system. "Surrender now or be destroyed." Chen's reply became legend throughout the galaxy in the years that followed. Her voice was calm, almost conversational, but it carried the promise of violence that made even the Kroger Admiral pause. "Surrender?" she said, smiling coldly at the view screen. "Admiral, we're humans. We don't know the meaning of the word." The first energy blasts lit up the darkness of space as the battle began. The first salvo from the hegemony ships should have destroyed the Defiance Edge instantly. 3 warships firing in perfect coordination, their energy beams converging on the single human vessel like the fingers of an angry god. But when the light faded, the human ship was gone. Where did they go? Admiral Thexvar demanded, his yellow eyes scanning the tactical display. His weapons officer studied the readings in confusion. "Unknown, Admiral. They simply vanished." The Defiance Edge reappeared 3 kilometers away, diving toward the astral bloom at an angle that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. Energy beams reached out from its weapon ports, not at the hegemony ships but at the debris field left by the space anomaly that had damaged the Zephyrian vessel. "What are they doing?" Thexvar snarled. On the bridge of the astral bloom, Thiska watched in amazement as chunks of twisted metal began moving in response to the human ship's careful shots. The debris was forming a rough barrier between the two groups of vessels. "Clever," Vexnol whispered. "They are using the wreckage as cover." Captain Chen's voice came over the communication channel, calm and professional. "Arya, calculate firing solutions for debris field manipulation. Marcus, reroute power from life support to shields. Rosa, I need you to make the engines sing." "Already on it, Captain," Rosa's voice replied. "But I should warn you, I'm pushing these systems way beyond safe parameters." "Since when do we worry about safe?" Chen asked with dark humor. The Defiance Edge emerged from behind a large piece of wreckage, its weapons firing in rapid bursts. The shots were precisely aimed, targeting specific systems on the lead hegemony ship, rather than trying to destroy it outright. Admiral Thexvar's flagship staggered as its forward shield generators exploded in showers of sparks. "Return fire," he ordered. "Destroy that irritating human." But the human ship was already moving, diving and weaving through the debris field like a dancer performing an impossible ballet. The hegemony ships were larger and more powerful, but they were also slower and less maneuverable. Their shots missed again and again as the Defiance Edge twisted and turned through space. "This is insane," Kesyon whispered, watching the battle unfold. "How are they doing this?" Thaiska was beginning to understand. The humans were not trying to win through superior firepower. They were using speed, cunning, and sheer audacity to turn their weaknesses into advantages. Where the Zephyrians saw chaos, there was actually careful planning and split-second timing. "Marcus, bring us around to attack position Beta," Chen ordered. "Dmitri, I need you to target their engine cooling systems." "Captain, that's a very small target at this range," Dmitri replied. "Since when has that stopped you?" The weapons specialist's laugh was heard clearly over the communication system. "Good point." The Defiance Edge rolled inverted and dove under the second hegemony ship, its weapons reaching out with surgical precision. Thaiska watched as small explosions blossomed along the enemy vessel's hull, each one carefully placed to cause maximum damage to critical systems. But the humans were not fighting alone. As the battle continued, Thaiska realized that the crew of the Defiance Edge was working as a perfect unit despite their constant chatter and arguments. Each person seemed to know exactly what the others were thinking. "Rosa, I need more power to the forward shields," Chen called out. "Already rerouting from the coffee maker," the engineer replied. "We'll have to drink water for a while." "The humanity," Marcus exclaimed in mock horror. "How will we survive?" Even in the middle of a life-or-death battle, they were joking with each other. Thiska could not understand how they could be so calm in the face of such danger. The answer came when Admiral Thexvar tried a new tactic. His 3 ships spread out in a wide formation, trying to surround the human vessel and catch it in crossfire. It was a sound strategy that should have worked. Instead, Chen ordered her ship directly toward the flagship at maximum speed. "Captain," Arya said urgently. "Collision course detected. Impact in 30 seconds, I see it," Chen replied calmly. "Marcus, prepare for emergency stop. Rosa, dump all power to forward shields. Dmitri, target their bridge." Thexvar watched in disbelief as the human ship accelerated directly toward his flagship. "They are going to ram us," he shouted. "Evasive maneuvers." But the hegemony ship was too large and slow to avoid collision. At the last possible second, the Defiance Edge fired its reverse thrusters at full power. Bleeding off just enough speed to avoid total destruction, the 2 ships struck each other with tremendous force, shields sparking and hull plates buckling. The impact sent both vessels spinning, but the human ship recovered first. As they separated, Dimitri's weapons found their target. The hegemony flagship's bridge exploded in a ball of fire and debris. "Admiral Thexvar's ship is dead in space," Arya reported. "Massive damage to command and control systems." The remaining 2 hegemony ships hesitated, unsure whether to continue the attack without their leader. In that moment of uncertainty, the Defiance Edge struck again. Moving with impossible speed and precision, the human ship crippled the engines of the second warship and destroyed the weapon systems of the third. Within minutes, 3 superior enemy vessels had been reduced to floating hulks. The bridge of the astral bloom was silent except for the sound of Zephyrian breathing. Thiska stared at the tactical display, unable to believe what she had witnessed. A single human ship had defeated 3 hegemony warships through tactics that defied all military logic. "How?" she whispered. Captain Chen's voice answered her over the communication channel. "We're humans, Commander. We've been fighting impossible odds since before we learned to walk upright. It's what we do." On the main view screen, they could see Admiral Thexvar's damaged flagship limping away from the battle. The Krogar's voice crackled through the static of his damaged communication system, filled with rage and wounded pride. "This is not over, humans," he snarled. "The hegemony remembers its enemies. We will return with more ships, more weapons. You cannot protect these aliens forever." Chen's reply was typically human, casual, and unconcerned. "Looking forward to it, Admiral. Next time, bring more ships. These 3 barely warmed up our engines." The communication channel closed, leaving the battlefield in eerie quiet. The Defiant's edge hung motionless among the debris, its hull scarred but intact. Somehow, impossibly, they had won. "Commander Thiska," Chen's voice said gently, "how are your repairs coming? Can the astral bloom make the jump to faster than light?" Thiska checked with her ship's systems. The astral bloom was weak but functional, its biodrive slowly returning to full power. "Yes," she said. "We can reach Council space." "Good. I suggest you get moving before more hegemony ships arrive. They tend to travel in larger groups." As if summoned by her words, Arya's voice announced, "Captain, I'm detecting additional ships approaching from the outer system. Multiple contacts, hegemony configuration." Chen sighed. "Of course there are. Rosa, how long until we can jump?" 5 minutes for full power," the engineer replied. 3 minutes for a short hop that might not kill us. We'll take the short hop. Thiska, you should go now while you can." But the Zephyrian commander found herself reluctant to leave. These humans had risked everything to save her and her crew. They had fought impossible odds and won through courage and determination. And now they were in danger because of that choice. "Come with us," she said suddenly. "The astral bloom can carry your ship in its cargo bay. We can reach Council space together." There was a pause. "That's a generous offer, Commander, but we can't accept. Someone needs to delay these new ships, buy you time to escape. You cannot fight an entire fleet." Chen's laugh was warm and confident. "We don't plan to fight them. We plan to lead them on a merry chase through the most dangerous part of this system while you get away safely. But you could be killed." "Could be," Chen agreed. "But that's a risk we're willing to take. No one else dies today if I can help it." As the astral bloom prepared to jump to faster than light speed, Thiska watched the human ship accelerate toward the approaching hegemony fleet. She realized that everything she thought she knew about civilization, about violence, about what it meant to be truly brave, had been turned upside down in the space of a few hours. These humans, with their crude ships and violent ways, had shown her something her peaceful people had never understood. Sometimes, the only way to protect peace was to be willing to fight for it. 3 days later, the astral bloom drifted in the safety of Council space, its bioluminescence restored to full strength. The ship's living hull pulsed with healthy blue light, and its neural systems hummed with renewed vitality. To any outside observer, it appeared that the crisis was over and life had returned to normal. But Thiska stood alone in her private quarters, staring out at the stars, and nothing felt normal anymore. The rescue had been a success. Her crew was safe. The astral bloom was healed. They had even received word that the Defiant's edge had escaped the hegemony fleet through a daring chase through an asteroid field that had disabled 2 pursuing ships and convinced the others to give up the hunt. Yet Thiska felt changed in ways she could not fully understand. The events of the past few days had shattered beliefs she had held her entire life, forced her to question everything her people had taught her about civilization, peace, and the nature of survival in a hostile universe. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. "Enter," she called. Vexnol stepped into the chamber, his pale blue face marked with concern. "Commander, the Council has requested a full report on our encounter with the humans." "How shall I record the incident?" Thiska turned away from the viewing port. "What do you think we should tell them?" Her second officer was quiet for a moment. "The truth seems complicated, that humans saved us through violence, that they risked their lives for strangers, that they succeeded where our peaceful methods would have failed." He paused. "The Council will not know what to make of such a report. Thiska understood his dilemma. The Galactic Council viewed humans as barely civilized barbarians, useful only for dangerous jobs that more advanced species preferred to avoid. The idea that these primitives might have something to teach the galaxy's enlightened races would be difficult for many to accept. "Tell me, Vexnol," she said quietly, "what do you think of the humans now?" "I think," he said carefully, "that they are not what we expected. They are crude and violent, yes, but they are also brave and loyal. They protected us when no one else would. They asked for nothing in return. And you think this makes them, what, civilized?" "I think it makes them good," Vexnol replied simply. Before Thiska could respond, Kes-Yun appeared in the doorway. The young healer looked excited about something. "Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the human ship. Captain Chen wishes to speak with you." Thiska felt her pulse quicken. "Put her through to my quarters." The wall screen flickered to life, showing the familiar interior of the Defiant's Edge. Captain Chen sat in what appeared to be a small office, looking tired but satisfied. Behind her, Thiska could see crew members working on repairs, their voices raised in the cheerful arguments that seemed to be the human way of communicating. "Commander Thiska," Chen said with a smile, "good to see you made it to Council space safely. How's your ship doing?" "The astral bloom is fully recovered thanks to your people's help," Thiska replied. "But I am more concerned about you. We heard about your encounter with the hegemony fleet," Chen waved dismissively. "Nothing we couldn't handle. Rosa managed to navigate us through the Crying Rocks asteroid field, while Dimitri used the ship's mining lasers to create a rock slide that blocked the pursuit route. We're fine. Just a few more dents and scratches to add to the collection." She said it so casually, as if leading enemy warships through a deadly asteroid field was just another day at the office. Thiska was beginning to realize that for humans it probably was. "Captain Chen, Sarah," Thiska said, using the human's preferred name, "I need to ask you something. Why did you risk so much for us? We are strangers. Our species barely knows each other. Why would you fight 3 warships to protect people you had just met?" Chen was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "You know what the funny thing is? Back on Earth, before we reached the stars, humans used to fight each other constantly. Wars, conflicts, violence everywhere. A lot of species look at our history and think we're just naturally aggressive." She stood up and moved to her own viewing port, looking out at the stars. "But the truth is, humans don't fight because we like violence. We fight because sometimes it's the only way to protect what matters, and what matters to us is simple. Nobody gets left behind. Nobody dies alone if we can help it. But we were not your responsibility," Thiska protested. "Doesn't matter," Chen replied, turning back to the screen. "You called for help. We heard you. That made you our responsibility." She smiled. "Besides, what kind of people would we be if we just ignored someone in trouble because helping them was dangerous?" Dr. Elena Vasquez appeared behind Chen carrying a medical kit. Thiska had met the ship's doctor briefly during the rescue. She was a gentlewoman who had treated the Zephyrian crew's minor injuries with skill and compassion. "Sorry to interrupt, Captain," Elena said, "but I wanted to give Commander Thiska these medical scans before we lost contact." She handed Chen a data pad, which the captain held up to the screen. "Elena's been analyzing the effects of that space anomaly on your people. She thinks she might be able to help other ships that encounter similar problems. You are sharing your medical knowledge with us?" Thiska asked, surprised. Elena smiled. "Information should be free, especially when it can save lives. We humans believe that everyone benefits when knowledge is shared." After the communication ended, Thiska found herself walking through the Astral Bloom's corridors, observing her crew as they went about their daily routines. They seemed different somehow, changed by their encounter with the humans just as she was. She found Kes-Yun in the medical bay, studying the data that Dr. Vasquez had provided. The young healer looked up as Thiska entered. "This human medical technique is fascinating," Kes-Yun said. "It is crude compared to our biohealing methods, but it is also very practical. They have found ways to treat injuries that we cannot heal. And what do you think of that?" "I think," Kes-Yun said thoughtfully, "that perhaps there is more than one way to help people. We focus on harmony and gentle healing. They focus on practical solutions and quick action. Both have value." Thiska made her way to the bridge, where she found her crew discussing the report they would send to the council. The conversation stopped when she entered, all eyes turning to her expectantly. "What do we tell them, Commander?" asked her navigation officer. "How do we explain what happened?" Thaiska looked around at her crew, these beings she had served with for years, people she cared about deeply. They were alive because humans had been willing to fight and die for strangers. They had learned that sometimes violence was not evil but necessary, that civilization was not just about avoiding conflict, but about standing up for what was right. "We tell them the truth," she said finally. "We tell them that humans are not the barbarians we thought they were. We tell them that these people have something to teach us about courage, about loyalty, about what it really means to protect others." "The Council will not want to hear that," Vexnol warned. "Then the Council needs to learn," Thaiska replied firmly. "The galaxy is not as safe as we pretend it is. There are species like the hegemony who respect only strength, who see our peaceful nature as weakness to be exploited. Perhaps it is time we acknowledge that sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be willing to fight for it." She moved to the communication console and began composing her report. As she wrote, she thought about Captain Chen's words, about humans who fought not because they loved violence, but because they loved their fellow beings enough to protect them. The report she sent to the Council that day was unlike any in Zephyrian history. It spoke of humans not as primitive barbarians, but as unlikely heroes. It described their willingness to sacrifice for strangers, their courage in the face of impossible odds, their casual acceptance of danger in defense of others. Most importantly, it challenged the Council's assumptions about what made a species truly civilized. Weeks later, as word of the incident spread through Council space, other species began to reconsider their opinions of humanity. Some dismissed the report as Zephyrian sentimentality. Others began to wonder if perhaps there was more to these crude humans than met the eye. But in the depths of space, far from the political discussions and philosophical debates, the reality was simple. Human ships began receiving more distress calls from other species. Word had spread that if you were in trouble, if you were stranded or threatened or abandoned, humans would come for you. They would fight for you. They would risk everything for you. They would never leave you behind. Because that was what humans did. It was who they were. And slowly, gradually, the galaxy began to understand that maybe, just maybe, the barbarians from the Outer Rim had something important to teach everyone else about what it truly meant to be civilized. In her final log entry about the incident, Thaiska wrote, "Today I learned that there are different kinds of strength. The strength to avoid conflict and the strength to face it when necessary. The strength to live in peace and the strength to fight for that peace when it is threatened. The humans possess both kinds of strength, and perhaps that is what makes them truly civilized." She paused, thinking of Captain Chen and her brave crew, then added, "I hope that someday, my people can learn to be as strong as these humans who saved us."